Hello, everybody, and
Cool.
welcome to today's BAInsights session. Today, I'm really pleased to have Vedran come along to have a chat with us. We're talking about agile BAs and how they make the ideal tech product owner. We'll also talk about impact-driven engineering as well. It's definitely a topic I'll be interested to hear about from Vedran. Before we get into the detail, though, definitely worth I'll ask Vedran to introduce himself. And actually, before he does, if anyone that is new to the channel, hasn't come along before, please subscribe. Like the video, of course, if you like what myself, mostly Vedran has to say. And just leave some comments as well, if there's questions or points of view that you have to share. But beside all that, yeah, Vedran, would you mind just introducing yourself, please?
Yeah, thanks for a nice introduction. My name is Vedran Križek. I'm a business analyst slash functional designer slash technical product owner, but I'm also a system architect, basically senior backend developer. And maybe kind of interesting or important bit to point out is that I'm actually actively practicing both, and I'm actually so I'm not kind of I grew from the development and end up in business analysis or in project manager or something like that. I tend to keep those two tracks separate, but alive at the same time, because what I found out is that the best results I get is when they intersect, really.
Yeah.
We'll talk about it later, but for example, you mentioned the role of technical product owner. From my experience, the experience, the technical experience, and the current technical experience, basically making it, keeping in training, so to speak, made a huge world of difference, because it allowed me first to be well acquainted with actual engineering process, so to understand how the things that I am managing are actually being built, but on a deep level, and that allowed me to steer this process through products backlog by making choosing right things to build and right experiments to make it at right time, because I knew what the outcomes would be if I didn't do that, which was something which some of my colleagues who do not have technical background struggle with, because they kind of rely on technical team to fill them up on the priorities on stuff, and it doesn't work all the time. With good teams, yes, but thing is, in real life, teams are usually average, and that's how it is.
Yeah,
So
I can relate to that. I mean, in the same way that a business analyst that's been involved in the business, they will have a greater sense of perspective because
exactly.
they understand the business as well. So if you've been a business analyst and you've been a developer as well, then you'll naturally, I hope naturally, be a bit more aware of the type of questions you need to answer on behalf of the development team.
Yeah, my range as a business analyst is biased towards functional design and probably steering implementation, not so much to the pure business things. Pure business parts, I don't mean business logic or business rules or understanding business parts. I mean money making part, kind of marketing, choosing what the market wants. That's not really my strong point, and I kind of draw a line there. And this is, I mean, I end up being what I am is because I was like a CTO and founder of one of the bigger Croatian web agencies in well, let's say from 2007-ish to 2018 or 19, and I was CTO there, which kind of translates to everything guys. So I was one doing the sales stuff. I was making sure that that our development processes are up to standards and they produce quality. But I was also always kind of drawn or ended up being the one working with the requirements, because I tend to be able to kind of, or at least people tell me that that's the case, I tend to be able to explain technical terms to the non-technical people, and that really helped a lot in technical sales part, and also when I was doing the role of a functional designer, which is a kind of requirements architect, requirements engineer, and so on. So that allowed me to probably to be better in that. So and what I saw that this part was really, really, really important. And if it wasn't done right, because I was doing it in one way, the other people were doing it in different ways, and I saw that when I did what I think was good, that the projects would have a lot less issues. For example, and a lot less issues in implementation. For example, we started, we kind of, our claim to fame was that we built the first real Croatian classified system. It's Njuškalo.hr, and it was done by two and a half people, two and a half men, really. It was me, like, doing all the business analysis, all the system design, all the backend development. There was my partner there who was doing the design and who was doing the front end development, and there was one guy who was doing some import stuff, and we were able to do it in 9 months from the moment that we were asked to do it, and until it was on the production and working. And there was like a lottery, or like a pooling bet in the company that hired us to do it, that said we won't make it, and everybody who betted against us lost in the end, because we did. But the thing is, I kind of learned that you can build stuff rapidly. It can be complex, but there is a certain way that if you do it, it works. Also, you have to have. I was lucky that my partner was really compatible with the way I worked, and so on. So this is how I kind of ended up seeing that those two things are really kind of is inseparable. There is design phase, there is documentation phase, but what it all does is it's quest to create a mental model, functional mental model of what we are going to build in a way that is accessible to everybody. And if we can do that, then implementation is a different thing, but this implementation is in service of this mental model. We are implementing this mental model, because if we don't do it, I mean, nobody can implement as a developer. I always knew that I cannot implement something which I don't understand what it should do, because I wouldn't. I mean, for starters, I wouldn't know when I'm done, because I have no idea how I will test it if it's finished. So, and what happens, and this is kind of, this is in a root of quite a few evils which happen in a development, is that if you are not, if the business analyst or pre-production process or product owner hasn't built a mental model, then the developers will, because otherwise they don't have a choice, really. So it will happen whether you control it, or if you are aware of it, or control it or not. And this is why this curious effect is that every problem kind of crops up in development. Everything up until development seems to be fine. I mean, there's a lot of work done. There's a lot of documentation written. There is probably a lot of UI templates, drawn and shared and approved. And everything is kind of going smoothly until you get to development, because this is the first time that you are actually testing what you've done so far. So far, it's been, you didn't have really skin in the game until you start developing. And this is what I saw, that you could change that. I mean, most projects were, paying, but there are ways that I figured out that there are ways you can make them not painful. They can actually be quite an enjoyable experience if done correctly. And this is very long-winded, detour-ridden way of introducing this impact-driven development or engineering, which is really just about impact, making sure that, because impact is something which everybody understands. It's somebody can do something which they couldn't do before, and you can name that somebody, and you can exactly show what that something is, and that is as understandable to a CEO as well as the junior front-end developer. So because it's very easily testable. Okay, can this person achieve that? Show, and it never should be. It never rests on there are requirements. Now you need to read them. No, it's just show me. Can you actually? Can I share the screen with you? It's yes or no question, really. If I can, that is an impact, and this is something that's management, product managers, basically business side of things understand. And what I saw is when we were doing things, if we iteratively delivered impact, the other abuse synonym is value, but it's basically the same thing at every iteration, and not deliver code, because I see a bunch of teams that deliver a lot of features and code at the end of iteration, but they deliver very few, if any, impact. So it doesn't really change anything for anybody. And this is where management starts micromanaging, panicking, because it's obvious. I mean, they don't care about your code. They don't care if you have 90% test coverage. You should. That's basically your job. Your job is to make sure that what you deliver is up to standard. But nobody cares about that. What everybody cares is there a person who can now do something they couldn't do before? And if there is, please show me how. Please show me. And what I saw,
what's the input into impact-driven development then, Vedran? I mean, is it requirements in a typical way?
It's really the way to approach entire process, including the discovery and writing requirements. It is kind of this, this image with two faces or a vase in between, and you need to kind of switch your thinking about how you define you define requirements, because what you start to defining, you don't start with features. You don't care about features at all at early stage. What you care is what is the impact. And there are different kind of impacts. There is like impact is a very abused word. It's great for strategy presentations and sales pitches. That's great. We will have this kind of impact or that kind of impact. But for engineering, that's not really useful. There is one type of impact which is what I call functional impact, and any impact can be either positive, negative, or neutral. I mean, if it's positive, then somebody can do something that they couldn't do before. If it's negative, it's the opposite. Somebody cannot do something which they could before. If you look like on any authoritarian regime, that's the kind of thing. You have projects which are just have negative functional impact for somebody who you want to suppress or whatever. And there is neutral, which is when we basically redevelop something that somebody else developed and just put a badge on it or something. And these are the worst projects because they are total waste of resources. So they don't change anything. So what we are actually thinking about is a positive functional impact. And when you think about that, then you approach defining everything by figuring out what the actual impact is first of the entire system that you want to build, and then you go deeper. And the way to do it is really, it's in the definition. It's somebody, so you need to figure out who those somebodies are, can do something, and then we figure the goals of those something. It's basically actor goal list. As I said, it's nothing really new, but it does change things, because when you have a system which is defined first, like the top of the pyramid, is defined with a set of actor goals, or basically impacts for each individual stakeholder, and those stakeholders that do not have to be human. Basically, they can be any external system as well. And if you can verify that this scope is functionally complete, and there are formal methods to do that. I use very simple one, which is called CRUD. I identify all the nouns and basically figure out if I can tell from is my scope covering how they enter the system, exit the system, being used or being updated, and it's not perfect, but it's quick and it works really well. So when you have the system which is functionally complete and also delivers the impact, which is why it's being built in the first place, then you have something which is like a root, it's a foundation for everything else. Then you can go, first of all, it's very important thing. It has to make sense to you. If you are designing, it has to have, you should understand it and make it makes such sense that you are able to defend it in a room of hostile people, basically like that, to say, yeah, no, this makes sense, this works because like this. There can be, there be dragons parts. It just can be. You have to own it. And the thing is, with a functional approach, you can own it because it's at this point it's still written in a language that everybody understands, because it's talking about somebody. John can do this, and so and this is also very, very close to stories, because and then things starts to melt and make sense, because from that everything else stems. Because if John can share his screen is the goal, but if I don't provide implementation team with any more details than that, then basically I'm saying, do whatever you do. I assume that you will follow internal standards, technical standards. So what I will get will not be duct tape and rust. It will be it will be up to par. But the only thing I care about is that John can share his screen. And however you do it, you never will do that, because you have no idea what you will get. But the thing is, what it boils down into in practice is, okay, I want to what I want from you is that John, after you're done, John needs to be able to share his screen, and these are the things that I care about. Yeah, so there is a UI tool on this screen, or there is a UI tool that can ask him, and the system can prevent him from sharing his screen if he has, like, I don't know, camera started or whatever. And then those are acceptance criteria, and then those kind of start making sense, because what you do, you're fleshing out the details of your functional mental model. And functional mental model is pure impact. There is nothing in it which is not impact. Every single line of it is impact. And then suddenly you can do stuff better. And maybe there is an image that I think illustrates this well. And like 2 or 3 slides. If I can share it, I think it will.
Yeah,
help.
sure. Yeah, feel free. Yeah.
Okay, so now it's good.
So
okay,
we'll see.
All good now.
Okay. So this is when we talk the impact. This is the good image to illustrate. Impact is really before and after images. Spot the difference. That's kind of thing. Impact is change. So when I try to explain what impact really is, and this is also really good for explaining what acceptance criteria really are, is think about the universe, 2 parallel universes. They're exactly the same, except in one, your feature, product, whatever you're working on exists. And then answer the question, what is the difference between those 2 worlds? So how did it change for the better? That's why I call it, change the world for the better, one story at a time. How did it change? For whom it changed for the better, and how? And if you cannot answer this question, then your system is probably useless and it shouldn't be built. But everybody can answer this question, and this is probably really well illustrated with this image. And also, what I like to say, if you are technically oriented, it's a diff between 2 realities, really. If you have world 1, world 2, you do the k-diff, and what you get is really impact, provided they're exactly the same in every other aspect, except if your image is there or not. Your feature is there or not, and this is but this is the story, the image that I want to show you. Because let's assume that we have a product or project, and this is the intended impact. It's represented by this picture of a rose. This has like about 300,000 pixels. So let's say individual bits in it, elements. So this is what we want to deliver. And there are different ways to go about it. And the first is, which is very naive, but it's, from what I see in practice, it's scary how many projects are done like this. It's, you deliver sequentially. You start, and what you get at the 10%, you have absolutely nothing. You have spent 10% of your budget, delivered 10% of the actual detail or bits. This is full resolution. This is every single bit from the original image. But what you have is nothing, really. At 25%, after 25% of the budget, you kind of start figuring out it's probably a rose, but you don't know anything else. 33%, you know that it's a rose, but you have no idea it's just one rose, what's beneath it. You have very, very little information. But the rose is really nice. It's detailed. It's covered with all the tests, and it has all the bells and whistles, but you don't really have anything. And the 50%, so now you're half of budget in. You have delivered, you still don't know, you still don't see the grass. You still just see the sky, and there can be many surprises. The 75%, you kind of can guess, you can assume that probably it's just a pot and grass, but maybe there is a kitten there, you have no idea. And the thing is, who in their right mind would release any of these until we get to the 100%? And the answer is nobody, or 90% or something. The answer is nobody. And if we are going with a feature-driven and all the details up front, and then just build and deliver, then we get this, and it's no, it's no surprise that nobody wants to, and how would you prioritize this? You can't. But okay, so people say, okay, we are not crazy. We are doing this feature by feature, and this is what then happens. You get this. We need this feature, and then you build a feature, and then we need this feature, and there are like feature lists. When I see requirements which are feature lists, I cringe. Basically, it's a wish list. It's a kernel, but it's far from requirements. And then what happens is, you figure, oh yes, we have these petals, and then we have the stem. Yeah, but they connect, but we didn't think about how they will connect, and so we need this feature or that feature, and you get stuck. And then and more, you get pieces in the wrong places. Yeah, it's green. Everything around is green. It's probably going somewhere down, although it's not. And this is you're still stuck, because in this case it's not as hard to go with the MVP or iteratively, or do internal demos, but it's also really hard and complicated, and unless you're really experienced and have a high mileage, so to speak, no product manager will dare to actually do it iteratively, and because it just doesn't fit. And this is how it should be done. And I think this image really illustrates what impact-focused engineering is and delivery actually is. So this is the way to develop and deliver anything. As you see, there's exactly the same amount of pixels as here. Exactly the same. Here, each is 1 pixel high, the other is 10, but it's exactly the same amount of information. Here, you cannot be sure it's a rose. It can be, I don't know, English words for those flowers actually, but it can be some other flower. But the sky is there, the grass is there, the pot is there, the stem is there, everything is there. You have the functionally complete system. It's rough. It's not detailed, but it makes sense. After 25%, this is the exact same amount of information, exactly the same amount of information as this one. So here you had like a outline of something of what it might be. Here, if you're ballsy enough, you can actually go out with this. You can MVP this if you are that kind of person. On 33%. Quite most of the product managers would MVP, or at least make an internal demo. The 50, pretty much everybody would deliver it, because, and this is the thing, this is good enough. And for most projects, there is a point where things are good enough. And the only way to actually get to this point is to build and design things like this. Because otherwise, what happens here, 50% will get you nowhere. Here, 50% doesn't get you anywhere. So this is the main really taking point. This is what it all boils down to. And then what happens? If you can pull this off, this gives you incredible power, because this is the method which allows you to implement the best possible thing within the given budget, because you build it and it's more detail until you run out of the budget or you're done. And that is, which is completely not how it happens in any other scenario. For example, if we are on a project and after half of the delivered scope we run out of budget and we are doing it like this, somebody's probably getting a bonus, and here somebody's getting fired. That's how it basically, and it's the only thing you delivered exactly the same amount of information, not a bit more or less, but it's the difference how you approach it. And the thing is, you always keep the whole picture, and that's why impact focused engineering and it's relevant for business analysis, because it tells you how to build requirements. You don't build them from features up. You don't start with details. You start with impact. You start with this, these blocky rows. But your first goal is to get to these blocky rows and make sure that it has the pot, it has the grass, it has everything. And when it has everything, then and only then you start to add detail. And you don't have to add detail like all over, like I did here for simplicity. You could figure out and then that maybe the tricky bit is the connection between stem and the petals, and then you add details there. But you didn't lose the sky, you didn't lose the grass, you didn't lose anything. You just focused where the most risk is, and then you actually build it there. And this is how you can leverage your which is another thing that we struggle with, is how to leverage your internal expertise of your team. If we have a whole shared model, then we can talk about stuff in its fullness, and they will say, okay, yeah, this is cool, but this part I think we might have issues with, because this is a tricky bit to now I see what you're meaning. Yeah, this might be problematic. And then our prioritization just writes itself for us. And it's obviously we go there. It's obviously we'll do like a quick rapid prototype thing, because we know where the risk is, because people who can address technical risks can do it, because it's not it does not require for them to read 100-page dense book, which they will do, but they will not do at the same time. It's they will go through it because it's a part of their job, but they will not end up with a mental model which is the same as yours. This is why I digress, but the thing that always kind of was my pet peeve was when project managers solve problems by making meetings where everybody like sync, because everybody gets to their meeting, everybody speaks their part, then everybody shake hands and figure out that we understand each other, and then everybody leaves with a completely different set model in their mind, and problems are just we were kicking the can down the line. So really, so that's what this whole impact driven software engineering is really boils down to. And then the next logical question, okay, but we kind of already touched upon that. Okay, how do we define the scope? And the answer is stories, really, because it's actor goals. But the stories, because stories are something which is one of the most misunderstood. Okay, so but what it is, it's with every segment we think about impact first and keep the whole picture. That's the whole thing. So this is but it does require paradigm shift, because you kind of put the process on top of the head. You start with impact with low detail, and you are always trained or learned to be as precise as possible, to add detail, to be to be as exact as possible. And here you see the opposite. Don't be exact. Be exact only about the impact. Everything else is subject to change. It should serve the impact. We don't know the features at the beginning. We don't, unless we are we are building the system around the feature. But this feature, then it won't be 20 of them. It will be one, and it will kind of dictate the impact, and we'll still do it the same way, but the part of the rows will be sharp from the start. But we need everything else. So it needs to, you kind of needs to let go of this control and know that once you get a functionally complete system, you can get down to the details. And what is also this is the details matter much less than you, in my experience, much less than you think. They matter if your product manager, project manager, or your product sponsor, or whoever is paying for the software, if the only thing that they can see is details, delivered details or features, then there is no way for them to, then basically they want them all, because those features are devoid of the meaning. They are devoid of something that makes sense for the non-technical people. But if you deliver impact, they incredibly quickly stop caring about whether this button is here or there, or it's yellow or it's green, or how they on or what is in this drop down. If they can achieve what, and this is impact, they don't care. But if they don't see impact, or it's just next week thing, then they will focus and obsess on whether this button is exactly, maybe it should be 5 pixels more, and then it will work, because they didn't see it. So the thing is, the takeaways, details matter much less than you'd think, provided you can deliver impact. And this is the user stories when they come in, and they're really touchy subject. Everybody tried it. Everybody tried them. Everybody hated them. Everybody was first intrigued, then tried them, then was perplexed, then started hating them, and that's pretty much the kind of the usual cycle, which is because they were used, because people, and that's myself included, is we started using them as requirements, and they're not requirements. They're stories are here. It's in the name. They're meant to be told. They are basically the tool that gets you to shared mental model, because I can tell a story about John sharing his screen, and I can tell this story to the developer. I can tell this story to the project manager. I can tell this to the UI designer, and we are listening to the same story, and then everybody can take what they need out of the story and contribute, because UI guy would say, okay, for this, okay, we are working with this. Maybe it would cool if we put a link, like icon there, so then John can click on that. Okay, that's cool, but maybe there has to be, maybe he should have some preview, so he doesn't share something wrongly, and then the tech guy will say, okay, we have kind of like these easy ways to do it, and there are a couple of difficult ways. And this is all part, this is all familiar. This is all part of Scrum. It's refinement session. But when you're going through the motions, and most Scrums they are completely devoid of what we are actually doing. We have a backlog, and then we need to do something with that backlog, and then we have to do something else. And then if we follow the steps and the recipe and the events, then things will magically work. And they won't, because they're added on top of something which should already be there, and this is a strong engineering process. Scrum is not a replacement for engineering process. It's augmentation of it, because it's a whole different kind of words. We don't have to go there, but that's the whole point. So that's where you get user stories to make sense, and they don't make sense unless you tell them. And also, you should always have a short titles for them, because I absolutely hate when I see the backlog where the titles of the tickets of the product backlog items are stories, actually full stories. That's it's completely unnavigable. You cannot. It's incomprehensible. And the point is that they're not there for that. They're there to be told, and then through the telling to extract acceptance criteria, and to define them, to define the important bits of the story, important, basically like any other story, important bit. They're important bits. They're the highlights, the things that are important, and things that are filler. That is just they're on the journey. Yeah. So for that, if you use them in this kind of way, then things starts actually working, and that's basically it. So it's so the point is, you focus on what's and why's. To a certain degree it helps if you are designing in a collaborative manner, but the why is really not that important. And also there is this format as a role. I wanted to be able to do actions so that I can reason. this is a template. This is training wheels. This was always supposed to be training wheels. It was never supposed to be a holy format. And there is a term basically in the industry called template zombies. Is these people who, and the same is true for Given, When, Then, Gherkin. When people latch on the form, because form is easy to comprehend, you can learn it in an hour, and then just pour the terrible content in it. But the form is right, so probably okay, because the form is will magically transform my content. It won't. It's just there, so it's like a mental note. So you focus on what's and not on hows. Hows are for later. And then start with design impact and work backward. You work back to features. What's the best way to the way the feature should come into this is as an answer to question. What's the best way to achieve this goal? And yeah, we can have this. Oh yeah, maybe we can do it like this. That's the way how the features should come. It shouldn't come from the features, because then they are in a vacuum, and this really makes it hard to keep it consistent for the entirety. You don't obsess about details. There is like this saying, which is wrongly attributed to I think Leonardo da Vinci, is that no great work of art is ever finished, it's only abandoned. It's not him, it's actually some French poet, which I forgot his name, but this is actually true. And because if you start with the whole thing with a vision, it's a kind of a vision, but it's much more technical. It's a functional requirements, and then you can just distill it to there is a point where it's good enough, and you just go down until you get bored or run out of budget or whatever. And that's what he meant. It's never, you can always do more. You can always add one more feature. You can always add one more trick, and that's it. So and also what this allows you, and what you should, and what I try to do as much as possible, is to rapidly prototype. And with AI assisted coding, and as I said, I'm practicing development as well as business analysis, technical product ownership. This is what I'm really heavily into now, and it's for rapid prototyping. It's really an easy button thing. It's crazy, but yeah, that's beside the point. So that's kind of it, basically. So it's in my talk I talked about story mapping, because then story mapping actually kind of fits extremely nicely into this, because then the question is, okay, how do I get my stories? How do I get my stories and not be template zombies? And one of the best techniques that I've came across so far is user story mapping. But maybe the probably the most important part about this is, okay, this is about story mapping, but this is this. The thing is, this is nothing new. This is basically solving the same problem that people who wrote Agile Manifesto was trying to solve. They were all engineers, they were all consultants, they were all really, really experienced technical people and project managers, and they saw that classic way of really big upfront design doesn't work for something as intangible as a software which should kind of solve a particular problem. It was too complicated to get it right the first time, and too different from each of other. I mean, when you design a bridge or a house, it's kind of the of a kind. It's a bridge. There are rules there. So if you don't break them, the bridge will probably stand. But software it has much more moving parts, because it's solving custom problems. Bridge is kind of solving the problem of getting point A to point B, and there is a big hole in between, kind of. So but here every problem is different. So they figured, okay, how do we do it? And they designed the whole Agile thing, making Scrum, but through impact. If I kind of presented what my concept correctly, it should be kind of easy to fit into Scrum, into whole thing, story driven, acceptance criteria. It basically all comes together, and this is the important bit, because, as I said, every single guy who was in this group that designed basically the whole old buzzwords that we're using 30 years later, they're all very experienced engineers. And what they had one assumption which turned out to be wrong, and that is that, okay, we don't we don't touch the engineering process. We still design, we still, you know, develop, we still test, we still deliver, but we put a layer on top of it, so it allows us to do things like this. So we don't design everything to the last detail up front before we actually know what we're building. But let's do it in a way that we still have the mental model, we still know what we are doing, but we add details as they become important, and then just develop and iterate. And this requires certain programming techniques, and that's why it's called extreme programming, because then you have like test-driven development, acceptance test-driven development. You approach development design in a different way, because your whole idea is, I'm not building this one as a bridge where I build it once perfectly and then it's like that, it doesn't change, I just maintain it. I'm building bit by bit as I understand more details. So I'm expecting that I will change my code, and I will expect that the things that I write today, although they might be, you know, producing the impact I want, I will probably change them when I get more information. So this is it. So they're focused also on that. But what happened? So, but the assumption that was wrong is that the underlying engineering process won't be changed. Scrum is an engineering process. It's not a project management process. It's an engineering process, and what it turned into was more. Sometimes it sounds to me more of an HR thing than an engineering thing. It's all about, you know, it's empowerment. It's you know, team and this and that, and it's never the things which are never discussed are engineering parts, which are basically the whole point. And what you get today very often is very thin engineering level, and then teams struggle with delivery because they deliver, you know, they have they lose a lot of time on meetings, because that's all. If you lose sight of engineering and you're doing Scrum, the only thing that you're left with are actually meetings. And then what happens is that you get a lot of meetings, and everybody starts hating it. And Scrum has, from my experience, really mixed reputation today, deservedly so. But for me, it's the best way to, if you do it right, then it's crazy good. But it's so easy and it's so rarely done right, and it's so easy to done wrong. Because if you start from you know, ceremonies and roles, and not from the engineering part, then you will get it backwards. And then if it's backwards, then it looks like, then you get basically template zombie. It's the same things. People writing given when dance with terrible content. That's about it. So yeah, so the point is, this is nothing new. And so these are books I will wholeheartedly recommend. This user story mapping, this impact mapping book is also really good, but this is something I didn't go into either the talk or today. But user story mapping, this is Jeff Patton. This is one of the guys who were on that, you know, skiing trip when they figured it all out. So it's you know, it's a really knowledgeable set of guys, inside guys. So this is something which is not new, but I think it tells a lot that the fact that this is something which is 30 plus years old is still we're still struggling with implementing this. And my personal take is that because this was done by engineers, and they assumed the engineering part will not be touched, and it was implemented not by engineers, and they and the whole, you know, premise kind of fell away. And now we're kind of rolling the dice. It sometimes it works. It usually works when you by miracle get a really good team that can kind of compensate for all the stuff that's missing instinctively. And I've seen this happen in real life. But it was never because of the system. It was always in spite of the system. So if you know what I mean. Yeah.
I mean, it's quite interesting, Vedran, in terms of, I mean, many of the things that you shared there, because I think we've been in, probably a lot of us have been in environments where, you know, there is a whole bunch of stories being created, and no single picture of actually what big product is, what the big picture is you're trying to collectively accomplish. You know, so therefore, you know, there's more of an emphasis in trying to take the the whole bunch of stories that are either written or intended to be written, and start to divide them up into different sprints or different iterations, and figure out who's going to build what, and try and think as well, if we can combine some of those stories, do we end up with something that's usable, which we do, but it's not part of that end-to-end, as you mentioned. It's the equivalent of a few petals on your flower rather than
but if you're working with stories, then those petals are probably better than those puzzle pieces. They're probably more complete, because if you're working with stories, you are by default working with some impact. So it will be better. But just as you said, I wholeheartedly agree. Yeah.
And I think as BAs as well. I think there's lots that you've said there that we can definitely go and digest and think about. I think number one is trying to first make sure that big picture is understood. What is it we're trying to build? What is, and it doesn't have to be in detail, but just understanding actually that we're all going to come together and we're going to build an application that allows us to capture our time, perhaps, right? And knowing what that is, that's the requirement, and that's the first thing to try and build.
But what's a nice side effect of doing it through actors and goals and stories is that you're usually doing it at least with some some representatives of business, and this really, when you get to the point that this is easier than it sounds, and much quicker, to the point where you share a mental model with somebody from the business and from somebody from the marketing and maybe somebody from a different department, and it's kind of bonding experience, because you are, for a limited period of time, you share the same problem. And this is, you are not speaking technical lingo, you're not speaking, you're not doing the BA talk. You are actually talking in terms which matter to them. So what, for example, when I do like a story mapping session, after an hour, it's not a lot of time. We won't have the whole system, but we'll have a part of it, and everybody goes home very happy, because most of them learn something about their own job at this session, and this gives them makes it tangible, because they start from a position where we have to build this because our boss asked us for. We cannot do it. We are completely reliant on these guys, and we don't know how to do it. And they're anxious. After that point, they stop being so anxious, and this really then works. And as I said, if we do story mapping, then the whole thing is that you always get these horizontal slices are always end to end, meaning you get the whole picture. In every horizontal slice there is a entire rows, and that's the important part. Yeah. Sorry, I talk a lot. I do tend to do that.
Yeah, I think probably not a huge deal more for me to say, really. It was very nice of you, firstly, Vedran, to share some of the slides and share the concepts. I think some very obvious takeaways, as many probably, but the obvious ones are to not go too detailed too quickly. It's about thinking about what it is you're trying to achieve, being comfortable just articulating that very high level story first of all. Recognizing, whether it's through story mapping or otherwise, that once people have got a view of what you're trying to achieve, and you try and build something, to then explore it further and refine it further. And I guess there'll be a point where you've got something, and actually you think, we don't need to invest any more time, because what we've got is actually good enough, and therefore you won't have to create additional stories. But in those instances where perhaps where you do have a product that's been used now, but there's some features or functions within the product, is probably a better term, that if there's some valuable impact from enhancing those functions, that will be a time to then capture a bit of detail focused on the impact of enhancing a function, so that can be improved further, and everyone's clear on why they're doing a change and what benefit there's going to be.
Yeah, because basically you don't start from a blank sheet. You start from a feature which is already, has a lot of details, because it's already implemented. So it has all the details, in the world. So you're basically adding more, but still in this case, the reason for making the upgrade of the feature, it should be verbalized in a way. Okay, so how this will change, reality for somebody, for whom and why it will be better. And when it have that, because even if you start, if you're upgrading a feature, so for example, you can also quickly get to the point where you lose your way, and then start adding details and going deeper and deeper and deeper. This grounds you basically, because this is what we need to do, and then you can figure out what is the best way to get from the point where I am, which is current feature, which is all the details, and where is the best way to the point where I can observe and demonstrate this impact. And then this is the minimal amount of additional feature, and then you can add like 50 more details, but you are already done, and then it's fine. I mean, there is absolutely nothing wrong in making it like a jeweler does, add details just for the sake. I love programming. I program for fun. It's so, and I also program stuff which doesn't make any sense, but I like to program. So this is the same thing. You can actually do it, but the thing is, you need to always be able to tell, okay, this is where I'm going, and know, okay, now I've done it, so now I will indulge myself and add a couple of bells and whistles, because everybody likes bells and whistles, me included. So it's fine. But this is, with a limited budget, you need to be able to.
And you mentioned something a moment ago, Vedran. Actually, you mentioned mental model, right? And I assume that what you mean by that is like we've all got, we were all to verbalize the intended solution, and we all think about it. We're all on the same page. Is that really what that means, or is a mental model for you? Is it something? How would you define the mental model? Because I know you mentioned it a few times, and I feel like it's to understand it.
Okay, it's basically a okay. So the ability to envision what we are building, which is not just it's not just subjective to me. It will be subjective, but it should originate for somewhere, and should have like a single source of truth. So it's a designed model because we do design it, but then it's shared in a way which is complete, which doesn't happen, which if there is a lot of detail, special technical stuff, then you get this, this part does not concern me, this syndrome. And then UI designers would just read certain parts, tech guys will just read, the front-end guys will read just certain parts, and back-end guys will read just certain parts. And what you get here is everybody has a mental model, but it's not shared. It's just bits and pieces. That's the whole thing, really. It's what it is. It's easier if the mental model if the model that we're sharing is not too complicated, so it's on the functional level, so it's much easier to share. And but it can be anything. The point is, you need to be able to share it, and just written requirements make it really hard on the requirements engineer or business analyst, because writing those, so they're tricks. I use a couple of tricks, they work, but it's much harder than doing it like this, like I've mentioned. Does this answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. Yeah, there's just a term. I know you mentioned it a few times, and I thought,
I lifted from the user story mapping from the Patton's book. Basically, it's not mine. As I said, nothing of this is really new. It's just a spin on known stuff.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Yeah, I know I've heard the term before, but it's always useful to clarify that. I think Vedran, definitely appreciate you coming along and sharing your insight. I think it's been a few key takeaways. I think the biggest one is just what is it you're trying to deliver? Think about the impact of that end to end, and go layer by layer is fine, and you'll end up with something that is usable in its intended. I guess its end state. It might not be as refined as the final version, but you'll be able to use it. And I think that will perhaps alleviate some of those scenarios where you showed with the images of the puzzle that was partially made, the flower that was half made. You will always have something that is a benefit to the users, rather than something that's frustratingly a few features short of being usable.
Yes, and what you will see that like if you do it like this, things that used to be hard become easier. They don't disappear, like problems doesn't disappear, but they become easier. And I really suggest for anyone trying this, observe that it will, all the stuff that you struggle with become easier, and it's magic. So
Yeah.
and thank you very much for calling me. It was a pleasure and an honor.
No, likewise. Well.